This time in Cologne, Germany, but I took some photos and videos of the Vivo X200 Ultra and the Xiaomi 17 Ultra in Wesel, Germany. Here we want to have a camera comparison between those two, and you see the camera specifications already on screen here. 1-inch type sensor on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and a 35mm 101.28 inch sized sensor as a specialty of both of them. 200 megapixel periscope zoom, but variable zoom on the Xiaomi. Super interesting. And we also have some front facing shooters here. And I think we start off with the front facing video. Front facing video on both here, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and the Vivo X200 Ultra, actually 300 Ultra, I wish. Autofocus X200 Ultra and the Xiaomi 17 Ultra both feature it, both have it. I'm using the internal mics on both here. Both have the ability to switch to the back-facing cameras at 4K 30 and even 4K 60 frames per second. Which one is more stable? I think the 200 Ultra always had an issue with stability on the front-facing camera and the quality overall. They finally fixed it with the X300 Pro. But what do you think about the X200 Ultra here in comparison to the 17 Ultra? Which one is better? Also with HDR. It's weak on both because it's a very cloudy kind of day. What do you think about both of them? Which one is performing better? And let's switch directly to the back-facing cameras because we can. Faster on the 17 Ultra. If there's any audio delay, let's see. We have the ultra-wide angle on the 200 Ultra. This is the big change here, because the wane would be 35mm, so this is 50 now on the Xiaomi, so a bit better. But yeah, can go to 1.5 times, which is now 35mm on both. So which one is performing better here? Let's move a little bit around. Let's see how good is stabilization on both, how good is the audio quality. And let's go to the ultra-wide angle respectively. So which one of them is destroying the other one? Probably the 200 Ultra, because it has the better ultra-wide angle. But it's not so wide by default when I'm doing this. When I stop recording now on the 200 Ultra, I can go and select super wide mode and less stability. And when I'm recording now, you can see that the field of view is quite different, wider now on the 200 Ultra. No, almost the same in terms of width, but yeah, the 200 Ultra is a bit wider for sure. And yeah, let's perform a little zoom test. Let's go to 85 and 75 millimeters. I go to 85 as well. Should be the same now. Color difference huge, a lot brighter on the Xiaomi, a lot darker, actually a bit too dark on the Vivo. Let's go to 10x and we go to 8x here, and then I go to, there we go, 10x as well. So which one has more details there? Which one has better stabilization? And we can go up to 460 millimeters. Whopping on the Xiaomi, on the Vivo, and on the Xiaomi even 30 times zoom, which is a bit closer. This is, I think, roughly 20x zoom is what the Vivo can do. So which one is performing better there? Let's go back to the ultra wide angle. So which one is better also with the animations? What do you think? Which one is performing better in general here? When we compare the shots from the main camera sensors, we see the big difference in terms of focal length. On the Xiaomi it's 23, on the Vivo it's 35. The Xiaomi is using Leica Authentic, where the Vivo is using size natural. I can crop into the Xiaomi, into the main sensor to get roughly the same focal view, so 35mm here. And you can get almost the same kind of details out of both there. I would even say that it's a bit more natural looking on the Vivo because it doesn't have to crop in so much and it's not over sharpening as much as the Xiaomi is doing here, especially on the fence, for example, but also on the fonts there of the construction size. And when we check out 23 versus 23, which is on the Vivo now a crop in from the main, do we see much of a difference there? It is a bit softer for sure. Yeah, it is just a little bit too soft maybe, and there you can see the quality difference. Even though the Vivo has a good ultra wide angle, it is not competing against the 1-inch type sensor. detail levels are not on par. Let's check out the ultra wide angle and see a huge difference here for the 40mm. I'm not sure what's happening with the Vivo. It's way too dark, but I'm also not sure what's happening to the Xiaomi. It's way too bright for some reason. So somewhere in between is the correct one. In terms of field of view, exactly the same, 14mm. When I zoom in, however, you can see that, yeah, because it's a bit bluish and darkish on the Vivo, I'm not seeing so much details, like the trash bin here I can clearly see, where here it's like drowned in the black. And the same goes here for some certain things there underneath the tree. And towards the sides, both get a bit softer, but I think the Vivo is fighting the softness a little bit harder than the Xiaomi is. Especially also towards this side here. You can see it's overall a bit softer there on the Vivo in comparison to the Xiaomi. Check out the main camera sensors now, again cropping in on the Vivo at from the ultra wide angle 14mm and comparing it with the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. You can clearly see, just to see a comparison, if you need to rely on 23mm, I think that the Xiaomi is doing a better job there. Color wise, however, I could imagine Vivo being much more perceived as more natural, because it's just a little bit too aggressive there, the contrast, and a bit too yellow there, and the color accuracy is much more natural there on the Vivo X200 Ultra. Selfie is quite interesting, because here I think the Vivo is also doing a bit of less contrasty look, which I prefer usually, where the Xiaomi is brightening my face up a little bit, but sharpness and detail levels both are really on par there. Not much of a difference between those two. I would even say and argue that the Xiaomi looks a bit sharper than the Vivo even, and it's not only artificial sharpening, it is a bit tad more details that we have there on the Xiaomi. And then the one shot 35mm with a 1x sensor on the X200 Ultra and cropped in on the 17 Ultra, just to see how they cope with bokeh and such thing. So you can see at 35mm you get tad more bokeh on the Vivo in comparison to the Xiaomi. See also the difference again in white balance, much more warmish on the Xiaomi, much more colder on the Vivo. Which one is the best here is a good question, because they're very, very close together here. And this is one thing that is very interesting, because I think that the Xiaomi is doing a pretty good job without having the native 35mm lens. Pretty close, but it is, when you look at the detail levels a little bit further, that the Vivo has a slight edge at the 35mm range. Checking out 24mm versus 23mm, so roughly trying the same again there. You can see again darker on the Vivo, blurrier. I think we had this already. The colors are a bit more natural now on the Xiaomi. I switched to Leica Natural on the Xiaomi. Instead of using the Leica Authentic, I'm using Leica Vivid now, and Leica Natural as color profile, and this gives me a bit more natural colors, especially here with the greens that are a bit more punchy and darker on the Vivo still, but they look a bit more realistic now on the Xiaomi, which is like, thanks also to the raised brightness, maybe a bit more attractive looking. And then the Selfie with the same settings there. Actually, it's not a Selfie. Actually, it's using the main camera sensor at 35mm, because this is one of the big, good points, the big advantage points of the Vivo X200 Ultra portrait shots. This is not using portrait mode. This is the normal mode, just to see how they cope with this. And here you can see again a bit more mustard colors face. Yes, Xiaomi didn't suffer from this. The Xiaomi has the opposite. It has the more pale looking version of me, but actually I am a bit more pale. I'm leaning towards more pale, maybe not as pale as the Xiaomi makes me look like, but I'm definitely not as mustard color as the Vivo makes me look like. And the Vivo had way worse face colors, but the X200 Ultra I think is a bit just tad too warm there in this shot, and I would prefer the more realistic one on the Xiaomi. In terms of detail levels, both doing a very good job, and this is the one interesting thing here. I even think that the Xiaomi has a bit more details than the Vivo at this 35mm shot, which is quite interesting because the Vivo has a native focal length and the Xiaomi is just cropping in from the main. You can see the background blur being a bit blurrier there on the Vivo. This is one of the advantage points that it has for native focal length. Now 85mm, this is quite interesting because here I think even though we're using size natural, the colors here of the greens are way too overcooked on the X200 Ultra, and the Xiaomi is making a much better job there with like a natural. And what we can see here is in terms of detail levels at 85mm that the Vivo is sharpening things up a little bit more than what the Xiaomi is doing there. And this is why it seems to be a bit clearer here. But also the nuances in the shot are kept a little bit more in here. The color of the red is a bit too punchy on the Vivo in comparison to what the Xiaomi is showing, and the Xiaomi is more realistic in this regard, I have to say. Then let's go to another zoom extreme, 230mm 10x zoom basically. More contrasty for sure on the Xiaomi, less contrasty on the Vivo in terms of colors, very, very close, but a bit more greenish turquoise kind of color here, where it's a bit more bluish on the Xiaomi. Actually, it is more what the Vivo is doing here, not what the Xiaomi is doing, so it's not as blue, it's a bit more turquoise, this color there. Yeah, sharpness and detail levels there, you can see both are doing sharpening. It is almost the same applied sharpening. The only difference where you might perceive it as a bit more artificial on the Xiaomi is because it's adding a little bit more contrast, but that's basically it. And when we check out this shot here, quite interesting, 460mm. I tried to nail it on the Xiaomi as well, but I got only to 459. Is text, how they do render text at this, I think it's 20x zoom or 30x zoom, something like this. Both very, very similar, I have to say. We have a bit of more those glow here, but also the text a little bit more readable there on the Xiaomi, where here you can see the text is like as if someone would like cut out a few parts of the text or of a newspaper to create such things. So it's a bit processed looking and more natural, but with this glow looking on the Xiaomi. And this glows all over the place, as you see here, where it doesn't appear here so much. So yeah, very, very comparable, but you can see where the Vivo's struggling is this little sign here with the text. It's just like the resolution, the detail is missing to make anything out of this here. Where here, it is a bit more detailed, so you can actually read Niederrhein Museum Wesel, where this here is just not readable anymore. So there is a bit of an advantage, even though it's a slight advantage on the 17 Ultra in this extreme zoom levels. And here another one at 690mm, where it becomes more evident. On first glance, without zooming in, it looks much more natural on the X200 Ultra, where it looks just a little bit too artificially sharp, and the background is like nailed the color on the Vivo, and the Xiaomi completely, I don't know what's doing there with the color. It's not the real color of the stones there. When we go in here 100%, however, you can see that this is where the processing of Vivo is also kicking in very, very good and cleaning everything up. So we don't have the glow, we don't have a bit of noise even there sprinkled in there. It's super, super cool. Look at this here compared with this. It's like the text recreation is fantastically working here. And everything, like even the details here, are much more optimized. So as soon as the AI kicks in onto the Vivo, it is really nailing it. But let's go towards the sides here again, and it is a bit more readable than before, but still struggling a little bit to reconstruct such things there. And another thing that I forgot, the 57 there you can read as well, but look at the difference in the background there. It's again very obvious that the Vivo has a bit of better processing there. Now let's take a look at the selfie here in portrait mode. Warmer mustard color kind of face on the X200 Ultra, more realistic what the 17 Ultra is doing there. And in terms of sharpness and detail levels, both on par. It's just color wise, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is more consistent. And then we come to the extra zoom test here to see who's better in reconstruction of text. This is like 1380 millimeter. Trying to read the parcel station. And you can see how they reconstruct, how they are doing this, both unreadable there. In this case, this you can still read, but you see also like a huge difference there and how they process this kind of thing. And let's check out the ultra wide angle here. Again, the Vivo X200 Ultra is showing a way darker picture, a bit more bluish kind of picture, a bit more gloomy kind of day, where the 17 Ultra is way more yellow, way more warmer, even though it is a kind of gloomy day. It's just a bit too blue in my opinion on the Vivo. But what the Vivo nailed again is the blue color when you're talking about blue, because this is the right blue color of this building, where this is just overdone on the Xiaomi. That might have something to do with me having the Leica Vivid filter on, but I try to also always turn on Leica Natural as well. That should correct the colors a little bit there, but it's making this a bit too vivid there. Ultra wide angle, HDR is one thing that you can check out, basically identical between those two. It's a bit more sharper here on the Vivo than on the Xiaomi, but that's basically it. Also here, this sign, readable on both, actually. So not much of a difference between those two. Same focal lengths, should perform the same in terms of ultra wide angle. Then another zoom shot here, 10x, just to see, do we see much of a difference between those two? Again, in terms of colors, a bit more punchy on the Xiaomi. There is actually more sharpness on the Xiaomi. It's a bit softer, the effect there on the Vivo. I think the Vivo is softer overall there. And yeah, this is what you can see here. It's not a focus point shift or something like this. It's just simply soft. And then this shot 460 millimeter, just to see which one is performing better here. I think HDR wise, the Vivo has a bit of an edge, because this here is like going almost to overexposure, where this one is nicely keeping it there. And this is now at 460 millimeter, as I said, and yeah, both are doing a nice job there. Text renderation and detail levels almost identical there. Bit more contrasty look again on the Xiaomi, maybe a tad more details there on the Xiaomi as well. Look at the wood here, compare it with here. It's just because the Vivo is doing so much in cleaning noise patterns up, that it also, those little structures might get lost while doing that. Another photo here of this one. If I have to choose between the Vivo and the Xiaomi in this shot, just for stylization, I would choose the Xiaomi, thanks to more contrast, because it makes everything a little bit more black. And here it's a bit like, not black, actually a bit too bright. And the gold in there, the contrast levels are just piquing interest. And when we check out the detail levels here, both at 10x by the way, so using the telezoom sensor, you can see that it's struggling on the Vivo a lot, where the Xiaomi is looking cleaner. It's looking more detailed. It's looking a little bit better. Pattern-wise, I think here they nailed the details. It's just a detail on this little, what is it, dog, I think. A bit leaning towards the Xiaomi there. Both also capture the, and don't remove the spider nets there, which is quite nice. It's a bit of glooming going on, but both, this has a bit over sharpening going on as well. So yeah, I would take the Xiaomi for this colors purpose there. So you can see very, very close those two together, the 17 Ultra and the X200 Ultra. I see on the 17 Ultra sometimes the telezoom a little bit in front, but the rest is basically identical. Taking a look at the portraits, which one looks better to you? The more reddish kind of face with a bit of more shadow on the Vivo, or the more yellowified and keep the shadows a bit out of the face rendition of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra? I have to say I'm leaning towards more what the Vivo is doing here. It looks a bit more natural than what the Xiaomi is doing, at least when I'm looking from the outside. When I zoom in to 100% view, however, what I see is a completely overblown, overprocessed Vivo there. Redrawn eyebrows, everything sharpened up to oblivion almost. And I see a soft but way more natural looking Xiaomi. The only thing that the Xiaomi lacks a bit is maybe a bit of overexposure here on this side, where the Vivo handles this nicely. But overall, if I have to say, if I have to crop in, probably I like the Xiaomi better here. When I take a look at another shot here, 85mm, which both can do as well. And yes, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra has the advantage of also going 90 and 100 if you need to. Optical, that's to be said. The Vivo X200 Ultra has only 85 native, and this is how it looks like. Again, this overprocessed, very sharp look in comparison to the very soft look of the Xiaomi that I like a bit better because it looks more camera-like. The eyebrows don't look redrawn. Here they are definitely redrawn. The eyes are a bit redrawn as well. Here they are not so much. Color-wise, you can discuss and debate in the comment section which you like better. This is a bit more yellowish again. This is a bit more reddish again. I really don't like this red look on the Vivo, I have to say. So I would pick the Xiaomi here for sure again. And then, like I said, the advantage point of the Xiaomi 75mm, you can go classical portrait lens. Vivo X200 Ultra doesn't have this option. You cannot choose even in between the 2x and the 85mm that it has. So you have to use what you have, which is 50mm. And even this is a win for the Xiaomi in terms of detail levels. But even if I go to the 50, almost 50, like 46, which is 2x here, the Xiaomi allows me to go in between, not only optically because of the optical zoom, but also I could go to 50mm, I could go to 60mm if I want to, just crop in, where the Vivo doesn't have this option. It just has fixed different focal lengths there for the portrait. And even here, same spiel. Warmish, reddish face for some reason, yellowish kind of face a little bit there on the Xiaomi. When we go in 100%, again, it looks a way too artificial there on the Vivo in comparison to what the Xiaomi is doing. Xiaomi keeps it more real, in my opinion, and this is why it's winning this portrait comparison. But wait a second, there is another one, 35mm. How about that? Native focal lengths on the Vivo X200 Ultra should be a huge advantage of it. But when you take a look at it in close, nope. The colors are much more closer here in this example. Still, we get this like warmish kind of reddish. I don't know what's going on there. This is probably like still an afterthought of the mustard kind of face color, where the Xiaomi doesn't have it. It keeps it white because the light is a bit more white than yellow. And yeah, a bit maybe overexposed there, where the Vivo is like trying to get rid of every overexposure as much as possible. In terms of detail levels, again, when you take a look at the eyebrows, way more natural there on the Xiaomi, where it's redrawn on the Vivo. And I look a little bit too smooth there on the Vivo. When the Xiaomi, I have a little bit of more depth, I think. So yes, the Xiaomi is winning the portrait comparison here. Not by far, just by a hair. Default colors nicer on the Xiaomi. It's just looking too red and flat on the X200 Ultra. Plus the X200 Ultra is over-sharpening, overdoing it with AI, with the eyebrows especially, which I really don't like. And in direct comparison to the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, the 17 Ultra is the winner here when it comes to portraits. The night photos are quite interesting, especially when we start off with 10x zoom here. You can see there's a huge difference in terms of HDR. For the 17 Ultra, it is working very nicely. You can see and read actually QR codes and what's going on here, where in the X200 Ultra, it's overexposing, sadly. And the rest of the shot is almost identical between those two. Both have struggles with those little texts there. Not much of a difference there in terms of readability between those two. And both in terms of colors, as the car with lights on, but both in terms of colors otherwise, doing almost the same, but just the opposite kind of way as in daylight, so much cooler colors on the Xiaomi and warmer colors on the X200 Ultra. When we go even further in, the Vivo corrects the the overexposure here. So this is 690 millimeter, which is super long kind of zoom. Both are readable, but here at this, I would say the Xiaomi is a bit more readable than here. It's like struggling already with the little text there. It's a bit cleaner on the Xiaomi, especially here. Look at this one, a bit cleaner there. And the QR codes are a bit more detailed, and actually those here cannot be scanned in on the Vivo, but on the Xiaomi they can be scanned in. You can try it maybe yourself to scan them in. So if you need to do it from a long distance, the Xiaomi is in front there. And you can zoom in even further. This is 1380, just to show you the difference there, because then the X200 Ultra's AI is kicking in and it's repairing almost everything. The QR code is not scannable. The text is nicely cleaned up and readable. It looks like almost written on a piece of paper, where the Xiaomi doesn't have so aggressive kind of algorithms. Look at this here. You can see the pixelation. You can see the difference in terms of colors, like darkish and more blue. And here it's almost everything uniform and everything like unpixelated, pixel gone and cleaned up a lot there. So yeah, that's the difference in terms of how they render certain things. But overall, I would give a slight edge to the 17 Ultra here. Ultra wide angle at night, quite interesting that we have darker kind of shadows and contrast on the Vivo in comparison to the Xiaomi. 40 millimeters on both. In terms of colors, the very similar, but the Xiaomi a bit more correct because it's a bit too punchy there on the Vivo. Sharpness and detail levels is quite interesting because here is where the Vivo just has to win. It's like in daylight you don't notice so much of a difference there, which is quite a compliment for the Xiaomi, but at nighttime it just has to obliterate, and you can see like it's just like blur, and here it has to use the night mode on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, where it's just a one shot on the X200 Ultra because it has such a large sensor. So where I was a bit surprised at daylight, such a small sensor being almost on par with the larger sensor of the Vivo. At nighttime, it becomes evident that the Vivo has a much better ultra-wide angle. Main camera sensor, how good is the main camera sensor? 1 inch versus a little bit of smaller, older tech sensor on the X200 Ultra. Just check out HDR. This here nicely exposed. This is a bit overexposed. The colors, quite interesting, very close together there. Detail levels between those two, it's always hard to just see a huge difference. This is why maybe when they have different focal lengths, I thought I went to 35 millimeter to just check it out, but maybe I didn't. We see this overexposure here on the Vivo. This is where Xiaomi keeps it a little bit more real, and the detail levels here almost identical there. There is technically, definitely, thanks to the new sensor, low fig technology, a little bit of an advantage on the 1 inch type sensor. But in real life details, and when you just take the shot and look at the differences, it's just like two less differences between those two that I can give really 0.1 point or even more points better for the Xiaomi there than for the Vivo. Now the selfie cam at night. By the way, headphones, testing out the new Soundbeats Cove Pro. If you're interested in this, there's a review as well on my channel. Very good headphones. Way too warm again on the Vivo, and it nailed the color there on the 17 Ultra. Detail levels, 17 Ultra versus Vivo. I think the 7 Ultra is smoothing things up a little bit there, beautifying me. The Vivo is beautifying a little bit there. The 17 Ultra is keeping my face more as ugly as I am. And recreation of eyebrows, I think both are doing a little bit there. But ultimately, I would say the Xiaomi is doing a bit of a better job, slightly better job there, of rendering my face a little bit better there than what the Vivo is doing. And that's it at nighttime. So nighttime, it becomes evident there is an advantage of the telesensor. The main camera sensors is almost identical, and there's a huge advantage on the X200 Ultra when it comes to the ultra-wide angle. Ranking and conclusion. TLDR, the Vivo X200 Ultra gets a score of 9.6, where the Xiaomi 17 Ultra gets a score of 9.5. And if you are confused about the score system, yes, I've changed my ranking system slightly, and there's a dedicated, very detailed video where I explain everything. But if you are following the old point system, it's 4.797 points and 4.736 points on the Xiaomi. So where are the big differences? It's not the main camera photo quality, scored 9.8 on both. Yes, in details there you can see that the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is slightly better in certain situations, but most of the time they're performing exactly the same. The ultra-wide angle cam photo quality, however, is a huge win for the X200 Ultra. They basically put the same sensor as they put on the main sensor for the ultra-wide angle, and that shows significantly. At daylight, maybe not so much because computational photography is pretty good. But if you zoom in a little bit at details, you check your pixel peep, you will see that the main camera, the ultra-wide angle camera photo quality on the Vivo is mind-blowingly good. And especially at low light, you see the huge difference there. When it comes to zoom photo quality, both are performing very, very good. Almost 10 points for the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. The variable zoom is really working fine here and working wonders. And it gives from 75 to 100 almost very good, perfect results, optically speaking. The X200 Ultra has to do a little bit more with AI, and for longer zoom ranges, especially also text recreation, it is also working a little bit better. At nighttime you saw that it can fail at lower zoom levels like 10x, for example, sometimes even being overexposed. This is why only 9.8 points here, where the 17 Ultra gets 9.9 because it's handling this a little bit better there. But overall, both are very good, very solid when it comes to the zoom photo quality. Video recording quality is top notch on both, but we have a little bit of a better score there on the 17 Ultra. It's slightly better, especially when it comes to the front-facing camera. You saw the stabilization being better. It had some issues in this sample here with HDR, where the background sometimes went white and then this grayish again. So something they have to fix still on the Xiaomi. It's not perfect there, but it's better than the weak stabilization that we still have on the X200 Ultra's front-facing camera. And then the telezoom camera worked a bit further on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and was a bit clearer than on the X200 Ultra. It was quite a surprise to me. Otherwise, stabilization and the zoom in and out animations are pretty similar between those two. Both are doing a fine job there. But overall, then we have this a little bit of higher score on the 17 Ultra. Portrait performance, this is the new category that we have included in. I included also for the X200 Ultra here, is slightly better on the 17 Ultra. 9.7 instead of 9.6. Very close again. You can see also in the ranking score there, 4.865 versus 4.82. It's very, very close. But I like the more natural rendition on the 17 Ultra. It is not over sharpening my eyebrows. It's not making my eyebrows black, which they aren't, which the X200 Ultra sometimes is doing. Then the colors. The X200 Ultra is sometimes, not almost every time, making my face very red, even though I'm a little bit pale because it's winter. We don't have much sun. And I'm a bit more pale. I'm more indoors. I have only artificial light. And the 17 Ultra is not perfect either. It's making my face more yellowish, but it's also not recreating my eyebrows so much. And in terms of pleasant faces, I really grow to hate this reddish kind of face on the X200 Ultra. And I like the bit more realistic approach on the 17 Ultra, that together with the less sharpening and the colors is working a bit nicer for me than on the X200 Ultra. Then we have front-facing camera performance. This is basically identical. You see 9.0 score on both, and also the point system has 4.5 points for them. Both are very good when it comes to the photos with the front-facing camera. Both feature autofocus, and even daylight or nighttime, they both behave almost identical. Sometimes the 17 Ultra seems a bit less processed than the X200 Ultra, but the other time it is the opposite. And also in terms of colors, sometimes they have some weird glitches, but both are very good with the front-facing cameras. Camera UI wise, however, this is quite interesting. Both are now on the same points and score, because both offer a very good one-handed usage, where you can swipe to get certain sub-actions, like activating a timer, for example, which is very handy if you want to do self-portraits or selfies with group selfies, and you put your phone on a tripod or something like this, which is quite nice. But even if you want to change quickly a setting and you have it only in one hand, you can do quite quickly this kind of things. Extra features, however, is a huge win for the X200 Ultra. It scores 9.2 instead of just 9.0. Yes, the Xiaomi is not bad either, but the Vivo X200 Ultra is blowing it out of the water with setting up, for example, for video in Pro mode 24, 25 and 50 frames per second. So the PAL versions are there available as well. Burn-in LUTs in portrait video mode, which is a super interesting feature. Log they both offer as recording. Xiaomi has this nice C profile, custom photo profiles that you can set up and save, and always switch to a specific profile for taking good photos, which is also very nice. But overall, the X200 Ultra has a bit more settings and more extra features that you can dive in to and change little things there. So where does it end up in our ranking system? In my ranking system, actually. And you can see still on top, the ranking system has changed, now has some scores and ranking numbers, but the number one is still the X200 Ultra there, with a total rating of 9.6 out of 10, where the 17 Ultra has a 9.5 out of 10. You can see it's the same point or score system as the Pura 80 Ultra that is scored or ranked number 2 here, also 9.5 out of 10. You have to look into the details to see the huge difference between them, and you will see that it's just very minor kind of things, like video recording quality being better on the Huawei, which is one of the major points there why the Huawei is ranked number 2 there. And this is where the Xiaomi 17 Ultra sadly is not doing any big progress. I hope maybe an update will make it a little bit better there in terms of video recording quality. Otherwise, the rest is almost identical. It's just the front-facing camera on the Pura 80 Ultra is more flexible and also definitely better there. The same as with the X200 Ultra, where it's also losing. However, camera UI and extra features is something, or especially camera UI, where the Huawei needs a revamp, even though we have HarmonyOS ranked here, so it's not the old MUI that would score even lower. We still have to have some things like quickly setting a timer. Such things is super horrid. You have to go into sub-menu and settings for that one on the Pura 80 Ultra, which is just unbearable. Yeah, keep that in mind. Otherwise, the Find X8 Ultra is ranked one below. Why is that the reason? It has slightly less capable ultra-wide angle there, scored just 8.4 points, and also the zoom camera photo quality is a little bit weaker on the Find X8 Ultra with 9.8 score. And the video recording quality, however, is a little bit better with 9.6. Portrait performance is 9.7, is very solid there. And the front-facing camera is also a little bit better there on the Find X8 Ultra. But the camera UI and the extra features are a bit lacking. I think the extra features, Oppo should take a look at what Vivo is doing, but especially the camera UI is not very one-hand friendly, so you cannot just swipe with one hand to go to set up certain settings. You need to use a second hand for that, which is something that I don't like, and this is one of the criteria that I take into there. So this is my ranking and conclusion. What do you think about this score of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra against the X200 Ultra? Write it down in the comment section. What do you also think about this new ranking system? For some people, probably the first time that they see this new ranking system. And for everyone who did not watch the video about my explanation on what I changed on the ranking system, just go out and watch it. And that's what I will do. And I will, of course, improve this ranking system based upon all the feedback that I will collect throughout the year. I will not change it probably within 1 year, only if there's a major issue that I encountered in how I calculate all this stuff. But as I didn't change too much there, probably not. But you can give feedback down below. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.